In this video, I want to talk you through two sample t-tests, what they are, when you would use them, and how to perform them in R. So what is actually a two sample t-test and when would you use it? So you would use this when you want to test for a statistical difference between two population means. Rather than the one sample, where comparing one population mean against one that you know, this is when you're looking at two populations and you want to see whether there's a difference. So in this figure on the right hand side here, you've got one population here with the mean and one population here with the mean, and you're testing for this difference, if there is a difference or not. And remember to check for the assumptions of the test, so think back to that video when I talked about t-test assumptions, so check for normality, standard deviations. And in this case, the null hypothesis again is that there's no difference in response between the treatments. Your alternative will be that there is a difference. An example of when you might use this test is, for example, thinking back to those researchers that were looking at the blood cholesterol levels. And they now want to look at whether the average blood cholesterol value was different between men and women. We've got our two populations, the men and then the women, and we're checking for the difference in the average or the mean difference between the two. Let's just have a look at how you would run this in R. So I'm just going to set my working directory. And you can see my one sample code from my previous video, but in this video we're focusing on the two sample. So I'm going to call my data file col-sex because we're looking at cholesterol levels by sex. And I'm going to read that in. And I'm just going to have a look at what these headers are, so cholesterol level and sex. So let's just have a quick look at what that data set looks like. You've got cholesterol level, and then you've got sex, so F for female, M for male. And what we're going to do now, remember, check those assumptions before a t-test. Because they're all in one column, we need to subset those columns to have a look at these separately. Both the female and the male populations need to be normally distributed. First of all, I'm going to subset them. So I'm going to subset them into cholesterol female, subset that col-sex, and I want it for where the sex equals female. So run that and you can see, yes, I've got 50 observations. If I have a quick look, they're all female. So that seems to have done the job. And I'm just going to do the same again, but subset out the males. So I'm going to do that, about 50 observations. And now I'm just going to use a histogram. You could use the Shapiro-Wilks test if you want, but I'm just going to eyeball it and have a look at what it looks like. I'm going to use that hist function. I'm going to look at that col_F, so just looking at the females, and look at that cholesterol level to see if it's normally distributed. So I'm going to quickly run this. So you could, using that data visualization, change the breaks and have a look. We're just having a quick eyeball of this. It looks like it could be about normally distributed. I'm going to say that's okay for us to run this t-test for the females. Let's just have a quick look at what the males look like. Male, same again, you can see this kind of a rough bell-shaped curve here, so I would say that that's okay to perform this t-test. So in the one sample you had the t-test and you had the column and then you had the mean that you're comparing it to. But in this case, we're using the t-test function, and then you include what you want to look at. So we're looking at cholesterol level, and we're looking at this as a factor of sex. So this should be familiar with you using this factor from those box plots that you did in the data visualization. So we're looking at what happens to cholesterol level as a factor of sex. And then we're telling R that we want to use that col-sex data frame. If I run this, you can see that as opposed to the one sample test, it's printed me out a Welsh two sample t-test. And the data it's done, it's looked at that cholesterol level and it's split it up as that factor sex, so males versus females. Again, you've got your t-test statistic, you've got your degrees of freedom, and you've got your p-value. So remember not to report this in standard form. Always do p is less than 0.01 or perhaps 0.001. And we only go down to 0.001. And this time, like in the previous one sample t-test, it's given us the means in the two different groups. So the means of the females are 232 and the means in the males is 225. When you're reporting these statistics, you probably want to report those means as well and show which direction the test is happening in. So there's a significant difference, and females have significantly higher cholesterol levels than men. And for how to report this, make sure to check the notes on the t-test for how you would report this in the style of a scientific article. So that's 2 sample t-tests.